All right, now let's get to a fellow division rival in terms of the Miami Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa dealing with that concussion, set to return against the Steelers in Sunday Night Football. And the Dolphins want to get out of a 3-week slide. It'll be a job for Tua Tagovailoa, and it's presented by Jiffy Lube. Spent the past 2 weeks in protocol. Miami losing both games, and they're 0-3 after a 3-0 start. Rick, let me start with you first here. Given what you know at the situation and heard from both Tua Tagovailoa and Mike McDaniel, what do you think about the situation in Miami trying to get their quarterback back on the field?
Yeah, no, they're not going to put him back on the field until he's completely healthy. And apparently he has passed all that protocol, and there's a lot of independent tests that you have to go through outside of the organization to get back on the field. And it sounds like he's done that. But there's no question that Tua gives them the best chance to win if he's at the quarterback position. And I got an opportunity to watch him down at practice this preseason and during training camp, and what Mike McDaniel has done with him and putting him in situations to be successful. And Scotty, you referred to it earlier, having a lot of quick hitting throws, getting him in rhythm, especially with the playmakers that he has on the offensive side of the ball with Hill and Waddle. And now what you've seen, and especially in that Baltimore game, taking more shots down the field, the more confident they feel Tua is in this offense. And there's no question that if he's in that game and he's playing, they're going to have a pretty good chance to win that game.
I agree with you, Rick. I think that they certainly have a better chance with Tua in the game. All that being said, the other thing that they have to do is make sure that the rest of their football team is doing things better. Because right now, the Miami Dolphins are the fourth worst team in the National Football League in terms of penalties. They're 28th in the league in terms of overall turnover differential, and they're the 28th ranked red zone defense in the National Football League, and the 6th worst defense in the National Football League. You put those things together with the absence of Tua and all the things that you talked about, Rick, this is a big problem. They need to have this confluence of Tua coming back, being having the best quarterback on the field, but also making sure that the rest of their football team carries their weight as well. The last 3 weeks, they have not been doing that, Rick.
Yep, and then we've seen, of course, Teddy Bridgewater, Skylar Thompson, both get into games and then both leave games due to injuries, of course. So a lot of the quarterback carousel happening there with Mike McDaniel. Guys, another thing that was sort of another storyline, although not as prolific or predominant there talked about, is obviously Brian Flores returned to South Florida after being fired last season. A lot was talked about his influence, maybe the knowledge against Tom Brady and their win over the Bucs. Similar things are being said about Tua Tagovailoa. And what do you guys think? I'm curious to get your thoughts, because what usually can be taken from a coach who has previous history with certain players and teams? Scott, I'll start with you.
Tommy, the thing that I know this here's what I know about Brian Flores. I hired Brian Flores out of Boston College 2 weeks after he graduated. He worked in the personnel department with me for 5 years. He knows personnel, and I really believe that some of the best coaches in the National Football League are coaches that know their players, what they can do, what they can't do, and know exactly how to use them and make sure that they don't have their warts exposed. I think Brian Flores' knowledge of the Miami Dolphins, the players that are there and were there with him, is going to be really helpful, because, again, they will know the kryptonite of some of the other players. So I think that there will be a slight advantage, but the best team is going to win here, and that's what it always comes down to. But Brian Flores' past knowledge and his understanding of personnel, what players can do, what they can't do, is, I think, one of his greatest strengths, and why I think he should be a future head coach again.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up with that, is that I think he is going to have a big influence with Pittsburgh's offense, because he knows the defense, he knows Miami's defensive personnel, he knows the scheme, because they pretty much have the same personnel as when he was there, and they have the same defensive coordinator, and they're running the same scheme. So you referred to earlier about how Miami's defense has struggled this year. Well, it may even struggle more because of the knowledge that Brian Flores has.
Yeah, and I just have a quick follow-up, Rick. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I'm just curious. You know, you and I both worked in the league a very long time. A guy like Brian Flores, who is a coach and a tremendous leader and understands the X's and O's and how to win games, but have you been around coaches that have a great deal or a vast background in personnel, and how important do you think that is? Because I think it's something that can be so important and makes the difference between some good head coaches and great head coaches as to whether or not they understand personnel.
Well, personnel is huge, and you're always looking for matchups. And if a coach doesn't know matchup, how is he going to do schemes? But if you can identify personnel and understand the strengths and weaknesses of those players, then you're going to attack those weaknesses. And that has to go back to what you're referring to as Brian and how good he is in personnel. And you're going to see that some on Sunday.
All right, you guys are both on the same page in terms of what Brian Flores can bring to this game. And guys, let's wrap up a conversation about the AFC East right now, the only division with all the teams at 500 or better. I want to get your thoughts because we're going to put up a graphic of where the teams stand in the standings and then the odds to win the division. And we know Buffalo certainly is on another level. It's reflected both in the standings and in the division odds. Rick, I'm going to have you start first. Which team among the Jets, Dolphins, and Patriots would you buy stock in today to not only maybe perhaps challenge Buffalo, but maybe also get that postseason spot down the road?
Wow, that's a pretty tough question. But the way New England is playing, and I'm never going to go against the Hall of Fame coach and how they're starting to peak now, I was going to say the Dolphins because I was a big fan of the Dolphins, but I think the Patriots are getting better and better each week. So I'm going to say the Patriots are going to give the Bills a little bit of a run for their money.
Rick, I'm right there with you. I have no idea what that far right column is. Were those runs batted in? I mean, what was all that? I still don't understand this whole betting thing. No, but to me, Rick, you bring up a great point, and that was one of the things that Bill was always so focused on was it's not just how you start the season, it's how you finish the season. So to me, I think the Jets are going to give a good run for the money, and I really think that the Patriots are going to get stronger as the season goes on. You watch what's happened with the New England rushing attack, and you look at their defense, what's happened in the next couple of weeks. But again, to me, all of this doesn't matter. What comes down to this time of year and going towards the second half and the home stretch, it's about who stays healthy.
And again, guys, then to Scott, that win-loss is all that matters. You guys know that. For the far right or for our betting nerds right there, projections and odds and action, those are all the things that we certainly get into. And right now, even though the Jets have won a few games, people don't think that they're going to be able to sustain that, basically, is what we have at the very end. Our thanks to Scott Pioli and Rick Spielman. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Also, want to remind you about the Inside the NFL promo. James Brown and company in the latest episode from Lessons Week 6. Bills taking down the Chiefs, what it could all mean, answering the league's burning questions, and the anatomy of a bye week, when to have it, why it helps, and why the players are doing.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.